Before the story begins, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know. What time do you usually watch videos? And don't forget to suggest the next story or content you'd like to see. Story 1. The Mirror in the Basement. It started as one of those easy, comfortable weekends that kids wait for all week. Sarah and Emily had been best friends since second grade, the kind of friendship where one word, one look could send them into fits of laughter. Emily was spending the weekend at Sarah's house, 2 whole nights of movies, snacks, whispered secrets, and the thrill of staying up late without parents checking on them every hour. Sarah's house was an old 2-story built in the late 1940s, the kind of place where every floorboard had its own creak and the air always seemed a little colder than it should be. The basement, in particular, had been off limits for as long as Emily could remember. Sarah's mom had explained, casually, that it was full of old junk and unsafe because of loose steps and poor lighting. That was fine with Emily, at least until that night. It was around 11:30 p.m., and the 2 girls had grown tired of the movie they'd been half watching. They started playing Truth or Dare, the kind of silly game that almost always ended with someone having to do something ridiculous. The dares escalated quickly, singing into a hairbrush like a rock star, eating a spoonful of peanut butter in one bite, and then Emily dared Sarah to sneak into the basement. Sarah's eyes widened. "We're not supposed to go down there." "Exactly," Emily whispered with a grin. "That's what makes it fun." After a few minutes of nervous giggling, Sarah agreed. She grabbed a small flashlight from her nightstand, and the 2 crept out of her room, careful not to wake her parents. The basement door was at the end of the hallway near the kitchen, painted the same dull beige as the walls. Sarah turned the brass knob slowly, the hinges whining softly. The air that drifted up from below was cool and musty, carrying a smell like wet concrete and dust. The wooden steps groaned under their weight as they descended. The flashlight's beam jittered as Sarah's hands trembled slightly, cutting through the darkness in narrow slices. At the bottom, the basement opened up into a wide, low-ceilinged space. Boxes were stacked high along the walls, their labels faded and curling. Rusty tools hung from a pegboard. A single naked bulb dangled from a cord in the center of the room. But Sarah didn't dare pull it. Something about leaving the basement lit up felt wrong. They wandered around for a few minutes, peeking into boxes filled with old magazines, holiday decorations, and a jumble of unrecognizable metal parts. That's when Emily's flashlight beam hit something leaning against the far wall, a large, cracked mirror. It was tall, framed in heavy dark wood carved with twisting vines. A jagged crack ran from the top left corner almost to the center, like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. The surface was so dusty, it looked gray, but when Emily stepped closer, she could see her reflection, and Sarah's, though both appeared strangely blurred. "This is creepy," Sarah murmured, hugging her arms to her chest. Emily grinned. "It's just a mirror. Come on, let's take a selfie with it." She held up her phone, the flashlight app casting a glow across their faces. They stood shoulder to shoulder, smiling nervously. Emily tapped the screen to focus, but the camera showed something strange. A third figure standing behind them. It was a woman. Her skin was pale to the point of gray, and her hair hung long and dark over her face. What little of her mouth was visible curled into a small, unnatural smile. Emily's heart lurched, and she spun around. There was nothing there. Just the cold, shadowy basement. She looked back at her phone, but the photo had blurred completely, like the camera had jerked. "Sarah, there was someone." "I don't want to be here anymore," Sarah cut in sharply, her voice shaking. They turned to leave, but Emily froze. In the mirror, the woman was still there, closer now, her head tilted slightly. The crack in the glass cut across her face, distorting her expression in a way that made Emily's stomach twist. "Sarah," Emily whispered, "look at the mirror. Don't turn around, just look." Sarah hesitated, then glanced at the glass. Her breath caught in a gasp. They both stepped backward, away from the mirror, but the reflection didn't match their movement. The woman stayed still, her eyes, if they were eyes, locked on theirs. A sharp, metallic clang echoed from somewhere in the dark corner of the basement. That was all it took. Sarah grabbed Emily's hand, and they bolted up the stairs, nearly tripping over each other. The basement door slammed shut behind them with a force neither of them had applied. They didn't speak for the rest of the night. Neither could shake the feeling that if they talked about it, they might invite her upstairs. The next morning, Emily woke early and wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water. She noticed Sarah's mom moving a large, heavy object out to the garage. It took Emily a moment to realize it was the mirror. "Where are you taking that?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah's mom smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't match the expression. "Oh, that old thing? It doesn't belong here. I don't even remember bringing it into the house. Better to get rid of it." Emily's mouth went dry. She wanted to ask more, but something in Sarah's mom's tone warned her not to. She just nodded and backed away. That afternoon, Emily went home. She told herself it had all been her imagination, a trick of the light and their nerves. But a week later, Sarah texted her in the middle of the night. "She's in my room." The message was followed by a photo, grainy, poorly lit, and taken from under a blanket. In the dim corner of the image, just visible in the shadows, was the pale, smiling woman. Story 2, the third voice. It was supposed to be the kind of sleepover that left you with sore cheeks from laughing too much. Mia had invited 3 friends, Lily, Hannah, and Zoe, over to her house for a Friday night of snacks, movies, and the kind of whispered gossip you can only share when the rest of the world is asleep. Mia's parents were away for the weekend, leaving her older brother Kyle in charge. He was 19, more interested in his video games than in whatever the girls were up to. That suited them fine. The less supervision, the better. By 10 p.m., the living room was transformed into a cozy nest of sleeping bags, pillows, of half-empty popcorn. They had watched a comedy, then a horror movie, just scary enough to make them glance over their shoulders, but not scary enough to ruin the night. At least, that was the plan. Around midnight, Hannah suggested they tell ghost stories. "We should do it in the dark," she added, already reaching for the lamp. The room fell into a soft glow from the string of fairy lights hanging over the TV. Shadows stretched along the walls. They went around in a circle, each telling a story, some real, some made up, all delivered with dramatic pauses and sudden shouts to make the others jump. By the time it was Zoe's turn, the air in the room felt heavier, like they'd unknowingly crossed an invisible line. Zoe smirked. "Okay, but my story's different. I've got proof." She pulled a small digital voice recorder from her backpack. "I found this at a thrift shop last week. The guy who sold it to me said it belonged to a paranormal investigator. I thought it would be fun to see if we could catch anything." Lily laughed. "Catch anything? Like a ghost just hanging out in your living room?" "Why not?" Zoe said, turning it on. She placed the recorder in the center of their circle. "You just have to ask questions and wait." At first, they treated it like a joke. Hannah asked if any ghosts liked pizza. Mia asked if they were going to pass their math test. The recorder's little red light blinked steadily as it captured every giggle, every sarcastic remark. Then Zoe leaned closer to the recorder and in a mock-serious voice asked, "Is there anyone here with us right now?" The room went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. After a moment, they all laughed and moved on to another story. About 20 minutes later, Zoe stopped the recording and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room, light, playful, teasing. Then came Zoe's question. "Is there anyone here with us right now?" There was a pause, and then, faint but unmistakable, a third voice answered, "Yes." It was low, raspy, almost a whisper, but not quiet enough to be mistaken for static. All 4 girls froze, staring at the recorder as if it might sprout teeth. "Was that one of you?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "No," Hannah said immediately, shaking her head. "No way. I was sitting right here. I didn't say a word." They replayed it. Over and over, the voice came through, soft, calm, certain. "Yes." Mia tried to laugh it off. "Maybe it's just interference from a radio or something." "Interference doesn't answer questions," Zoe replied quietly. They decided to try again, just to prove it was nothing. Zoe pressed record, and Mia asked, "If you're still here, can you say something else?" Silence. They waited. And waited. Finally, Zoe stopped the recording and hit play. This time, the voice came sooner. "I'm here." The words seemed to seep into the room, colder than the autumn night air outside. Hannah pulled her sleeping bag tighter around her shoulders. "Okay, I'm done with this game." But Zoe wasn't ready to stop. No, we need to know who it is. What if? Her sentence was cut off by a loud thump from the hallway. All four girls whipped their heads toward the sound. Kyle? Mia called out. No answer. She got up and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, shadows pooling in the corners. The air felt strangely thick, like it resisted her movement. She returned to the living room and found Zoe holding the recorder again. Last question, Zoe said, her voice shaky but determined. Where are you? They played the recording back instantly this time. In the room. The words were barely above a whisper, but the effect was immediate. The girls looked at one another, eyes wide, their hearts pounding. Mia's phone suddenly buzzed, making them all jump. It was a text from Kyle. I'm going to bed. Keep it down. The reassurance that someone else was in the house gave them a little courage, but not much. They decided to stop the session, turn on all the lights, and put on another movie to distract themselves. Eventually, the laughter returned, though it was softer, thinner around the edges. Around 2 a.m., one by one, they drifted off to sleep. Mia woke up later, unsure what had pulled her from sleep. The room was dark except for the glow of the paused TV screen. She could hear breathing, steady, slow, but it seemed too close. Her eyes adjusted, and she saw the others sleeping, curled in their bags. She turned her head toward the sound. The recorder was still in the center of the circle. Its red light was on, and someone was speaking into it. It was a voice she didn't recognize. Low, rhythmic, like a chant in a language she didn't understand. The words slid across the room like a draft, raising the hairs on her arms. She sat frozen, listening. The voice paused. Then, as if aware she was awake, it said, clearly, in perfect English, "You shouldn't have asked." The red light blinked off. Mia lay there until dawn, too afraid to move, her eyes locked on the silent, harmless-looking recorder. When morning came, the girls woke groggy and unsettled. Zoe grabbed the recorder, her expression guarded. "I'm erasing it," she said. But when she tried, the device froze. Every attempt to delete the files failed. The only way to silence it was to remove the batteries. Mia swore she heard a faint whisper when Zoe popped the last one out. Yes. Story 3. The Sleepwalking Friend. It started like every other sleepover they'd had since middle school. Junk food, bad horror movies, and the kind of inside jokes that only made sense to the four of them. This time, it was at Erin's house. Her parents were away for the weekend, but her older sister, Brooke, was home, which made it all feel safe enough. By midnight, the living room was a patchwork of blankets and pillows. The movie they'd been watching had turned into background noise while they scrolled on their phones and swapped stories about school drama. Somewhere between laughter and yawns, the night settled into that strange liminal quiet where the world outside feels miles away. Erin had one rule during sleepovers. Don't wake her friend Tessa if she starts sleepwalking. It wasn't a joke. Apparently, Tessa had been doing it since she was a kid, and her parents insisted that waking her could cause panic or confusion. Just let her do her thing, Erin had told them all once. She'll go back to bed on her own. The others had laughed at the time. But now, lying in their sleeping bags on Erin's living room floor, the warning felt less like a quirky fact and more like a seed planted in the back of their minds. It was around 2 a.m. when Hannah woke to the sound of soft footsteps. At first, she thought Erin had gone to the kitchen for water. But when she sat up, she saw Tessa. She was standing perfectly still at the edge of the room, her back to them, wearing the oversized hoodie she'd fallen asleep in. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was listening to something none of them could hear. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. "Erin?" she whispered. Erin stirred, blinking herself awake. When she saw Tessa, her expression changed instantly, tight, alert. She motioned for Hannah to stay quiet. Tessa began walking slowly toward the hallway that led to the back of the house. Her bare feet made almost no sound against the wooden floor. Zoe, still half asleep, mumbled, "Where's she going?" Erin shook her head. "Don't. Just let her go." So they watched. Tessa reached the hallway and stopped in front of the closed door to Erin's basement. Without hesitation, she placed her hand on the doorknob and began to turn it. Erin sat up fully now, frowning. "That's locked," she whispered. "It's always locked." But it wasn't locked tonight. The door swung open with a slow creaking sound. A rush of cold air spilled into the hallway, and Tessa disappeared down the stairs without turning on a light. The others exchanged nervous glances. Erin's voice was low but firm. "We're not going down there. Brooke's room is upstairs. I'll get her." Before she could move, something shifted in the basement. It was subtle, just the faint echo of movement, but it was enough to make them all freeze. Then from the dark below came a sound none of them could explain. A short, sharp laugh. It didn't sound like Tessa. Zoe's voice was trembling now. That wasn't her. That wasn't her voice. Erin grabbed her phone and started typing a text to Brooke, but her hands shook so badly she could barely hit the right keys. The sound came again, but this time it was quieter, closer to the base of the stairs, almost playful. Brooke appeared a moment later, her hair messy from sleep. "What the hell's going on?" she whispered. Erin pointed toward the open basement door. "Tessa went down there. And there's someone else." Brooke didn't hesitate. She grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and started down the stairs, motioning for them to stay put. The beam of light cut through the dark, bouncing off the concrete walls. "Tessa?" Brooke called. No answer. The girls waited, hearts hammering in their chests. Every second felt stretched thin, ready to snap. Then Brooke's voice floated up from the basement, tight with confusion. Erin? She's not here." "What do you mean she's not there?" Erin whispered back, but her voice cracked. "I mean the basement's empty." Before they could respond, a soft thud made them all turn. Tessa was standing in the living room again. No one had seen her come up the stairs. Her expression was blank, her eyes half-lidded, as if she were still asleep. She walked back to her sleeping bag, lay down, and curled up without a word. Brooke came back up the stairs, the beam of the flashlight sweeping over the empty hallway. "She wasn't down there when I looked. I swear." None of them slept well after that. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind against the windows made them flinch. In the morning, Tessa woke up cheerful, stretching like she'd had the best sleep of her life. She didn't remember getting up at all. Hannah couldn't help herself. "Do you ever dream when you're sleepwalking?" "Sometimes," Tessa said, frowning slightly as she poured cereal into a bowl. "Usually it's just me walking through my house at night, but last night was weird. I dreamed I went into a basement that wasn't mine. There was someone there." "Someone?" Erin asked carefully. Tessa's frown deepened. "Yeah, they were standing in the corner, smiling. They told me I'd brought friends this time." The spoon in Hannah's hand clattered against her bowl. Zoe asked, "What did they look like?" Tessa thought for a moment. "I don't know. I couldn't see their face, but their voice was..." She trailed off, searching for the word. "Happy," like they'd been waiting a long time. Brooke, who had been silent until now, crossed her arms. "The basement door was unlocked last night." "It's never unlocked." Erin swallowed hard. "I didn't unlock it." No one said anything for a long time. Later that day, after everyone had gone home, Erin's mom called to check in. Erin didn't mention the sleepwalking or the basement, but before hanging up, her mom said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. The locksmith came by yesterday to fix that old basement lock. I told him to leave it open for now until we decide on a new one." That night, Erin got a text from Tessa. It was just 2 words. "Still smiling." Story 4, The Empty Sleeping Bag. It was the first big sleepover of summer, the kind of gathering where nobody planned to sleep at all. Mia had invited 6 friends over to celebrate school being out, and her parents, trusting, relaxed, had set up the living room with snacks, soda, and a massive pile of blankets and sleeping bags. By 10 p.m., the floor looked like a colorful patchwork quilt, the air thick with the scent of popcorn and the faint buzz of excited conversation. They were all close friends, but this sleepover was special because of one person: Lila. She was new to the school, shy but magnetic in a way Mia couldn't explain. There was something about her calm voice, her quiet way of watching everyone else with an almost knowing smile. The others had only hung out with her once or twice, but they liked her instantly. Lila arrived late, just after the first horror movie ended. She carried her sleeping bag under one arm and a small, battered duffel bag in the other. She apologized for being late. Her parents had been weird about letting her come, she said, but eventually gave in. They settled into a rhythm: movies, gossip, ridiculous TikTok challenges. At one point, someone suggested truth or dare, but Lila declined, saying she didn't like games that made her talk about herself. Instead, she was perfectly content to sit cross-legged on her sleeping bag, quietly laughing at the others' dares and stories. Around 1:30 a.m., The energy began to fade. The room dimmed to just the flicker of a muted TV, and conversations grew slower, softer. One by one, the girls retreated into their sleeping bags. Mia was the last to crawl into hers, glancing around the room to make sure everyone was settled. She saw Lila lying on her back, eyes closed, her hands neatly folded over her chest like she was posing for a photograph. Mia fell asleep quickly after that. It was the sharp, cold silence that woke her. She didn't know what time it was, only that the TV was off and the air felt wrong. She pushed herself up on her elbows, listening. Then she noticed it. Lila's sleeping bag was empty. The zipper was half open, and the pillow she'd been using lay flat and undisturbed. Mia sat up fully, her pulse quickening. She scanned the room. Everyone else was asleep, breathing deeply in the warm quiet. She whispered, "Lila?" No answer. Mia considered waking someone, but part of her felt embarrassed. Maybe Lila had just gone to the bathroom. Still, the idea of being awake alone made her skin crawl, so she climbed out of her sleeping bag and tiptoed toward the hallway. The bathroom door was open and dark. So was the kitchen. Then, faintly, she heard something from upstairs. A soft dragging sound, like fabric brushing against the floor. Her parents' bedroom was upstairs, but they were gone for the night, staying at a cabin with friends. The only room up there that should have been empty was the guest room. Mia hesitated at the base of the stairs, every instinct screaming at her to go back to bed. But the dragging sound came again, followed by something else, murmuring. She climbed the stairs slowly, the wood creaking beneath her bare feet. The guest room door was cracked open, and a pale strip of light spilled into the hallway. Inside, Lila was sitting cross-legged on the bed, her back to the door. Spread out in front of her was a row of small objects Mia didn't recognize. Shiny coins, buttons, a tarnished ring, a smooth black stone. Lila was picking them up one by one, holding each close to her lips as she whispered something too soft for Mia to hear. Mia stepped closer, the floor groaning under her weight. Lila froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward the door. Her eyes were wide open, and there was nothing sleepy about them. "You're not supposed to be here," she said quietly. Mia's mouth went dry. "I was just wondering where you went." Lila's gaze shifted back to the objects. "They get lonely if I don't talk to them." Before Mia could ask what that meant, Lila carefully gathered the items into the duffel bag she'd brought. She stood, brushing past Mia on her way to the stairs. "Come on," she said without looking back. Mia followed, too unsettled to be left behind. They returned to the living room, where Lila climbed back into her sleeping bag without another word. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, deep and even, as if she were asleep again. Mia lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, Lila was gone. Not just out of the room, gone. Her sleeping bag was neatly rolled up, her duffel bag missing. No one had seen her leave. Mia texted her, but the message bounced back as "number not in service." She called another friend who'd introduced her to Lila in the first place, only to hear, "Wait, I thought you knew her. I don't have her number anymore either." That day, while tidying up, Mia's mom found something tucked under the couch where Lila had been sleeping. A small, smooth black stone. Mia picked it up and, without meaning to, whispered, "Hello." The sound of her own voice startled her. Later that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, she heard the dragging sound again. This time, it was coming from inside her room. Sleepovers are supposed to end with groggy smiles over breakfast, not unanswered questions and lingering dread. But once you've seen the shadows that move when everyone's asleep, or heard the voice that doesn't belong to anyone in the room, it's hard to ever feel safe in the dark again. So next time you zip up your sleeping bag, ask yourself, are you alone, or just pretending not to notice you're not?